Hello, and welcome to another episode of our Games Leadership Retrospective. My name is Melissa Phillips, and I'm about to pass you over to Mairi Nolan for her talk, Live, Laugh, Logical Deduction, Lessons Learned from Puzzle Design. Mairi Spaceship Nolan is a puzzle game designer based in the United Kingdom who has worked in escape rooms, tabletop games, murder mysteries, and video games. And when not designing, she also enjoys writing about them as the editor of the Escape Industry newsletter, the Escape Rumour, and other publications. And this is part of our free talks provided by the Games Leadership Network, a non-profit organisation aimed at raising awareness around leadership within the games industry. And we offer regular support and events around leadership just to get you thinking. So if you'd like to get more involved or take part in our online community, then you can check out our website at gamesleadership.com. We also partner regularly with the Games Leadership Academy, which offers paid courses and leadership training for industry professionals. So if you'd like to find out more about that, then please check out the website at www.gamesleadershipacademy.com. Right, over to Mairi.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Mairi and I'm a puzzle designer. So it is actually a little bit daunting being the second speaker in this series after Melissa's fantastic talk last month. But I thought I would just start with kind of who I am and what I'm here to talk about today. So I actually got started with the Games Leadership Network by taking part in their Emerging Leaders program a little bit earlier this year. Was it earlier this year or last year? I can't remember. Where is this year gone, honestly? It was earlier. And the program was absolutely amazing. So it was like their one-to-one leadership coaching. And the most interesting and surprising thing was that in our one-to-ones with me and Melissa, who was just speaking, was we actually spent a lot of time talking about mental health. So for sure, we talked about things like life and career progression and being a good leader and things like that. But I was surprised to find how sort of intertwined my personal mental health was and like the mental health of the teams I was looking after was as well. I think about my mental health often, but before doing the program, it was kind of like, here's my mental health in this box, and then here's the work I do in another box, and the two didn't meet often. So yeah, when I was invited to give this talk, I had a big think about what sort of things I might talk about, and the prompt was sort of sharing an interesting life lesson, like something I learned, or like one that helped me get where I am today, and keeping it relevant to the Games Leadership Network, like what makes me the leader I am today. And yeah, I pretty much decided to come full circle back to the idea of mental health because it turns out that any story I can possibly tell about me as a puzzle designer is very intertwined with mental health. So yeah, to be sure, for everyone watching, this isn't going to be a lesson in like how to do puzzle design or even like what makes a good puzzle game. Although I have a lot of opinions about that, so feel free to chat to me in the networking afterwards, and I would love to talk about that for hours. But yeah, this is more going to be a lesson on things like the macro of puzzle games. So where puzzle games can sit within, I guess, the big pantheon of different games that exist, sort of how society has been engaging with puzzle games recently, and then more on the micro level, like what kind of a tool they can be for mental health through some of the journeys I've been on over the last like decade or so, I guess. And hopefully I can leave you with the like important thing to think about at the end, which is kind of the why. Like, why do we, I'm saying we, I'm guessing most of us in this call are game designers or someone involved in games in some way, shape, or form. But like, why? Why do we make games? Why do we want to make the games we want to make? And yeah, knowing this and getting to grips with this can help make better leaders of us all, hopefully. But yeah, that was a very long intro. Before that, who am I? I didn't even get to that part yet. Let me change the slide. Hello. Really quick version. I'm Mairi. I'm a senior freelance puzzle designer with about 8 to 10 years experience in physical escape rooms, board games, immersive experiences, scavenger hunts, alternate reality games, and of course, the reason I'm here, video games as well. So I started out so many years ago designing games for myself. So for my friends, my family, little small events. And then my first proper games I got into were kind of probably the ones I did at university. And then after that, when I left university, I got more professionally into sort of murder mysteries and then into physical escape rooms. And then that kind of broadened into general puzzle design across medium, hence the strange list of games I work on. I won't list all of my clients because this is a short talk, but as I say, we'll be having a networking little Q&A afterwards. So happy to talk about them then. Alternatively, written on your screen right now. My username is Mairi Spaceship online everywhere. So you're welcome to come and find me in my portfolio, LinkedIn, whatever is the social media platform of your choice. And a side note, fun story for later, my name Spaceship is actually my real middle name on a lot of my official documents. So that's why I go by Mairi Spaceship. It's literally my first and my middle name. But yeah, sorry, getting off track. I guess the important thing to explain about myself before I jump into the talk is over my career, I have led teams of puzzle designers, puzzle developers. I currently mentor a number of people in mostly puzzle design, like early career game designers. And yeah, whenever I can, I try and also give talks about various aspects of puzzle design. So I guess a little bit like this talk, but usually it ends up getting a lot more technical when I really get into it. Yeah, when I'm not designing, I also write a lot about escape rooms. So I'm currently a member of and an ambassador for a few escape room NGOs. So things like the 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 Awards, the Escape Room Championships, and I write for a few different escape room news sources. That's a long way of me saying I'm really into escape rooms. So if you've got any escape room questions, oh my God, I would love to talk about them as well. But yeah, when I'm not designing, I also play a lot of games. My hobby's designing, my work is designing. So yeah, in all, I have a pretty unusual role and background to game design. So I don't think I've ever seen like the job role of like looking for a puzzle designer come up. Not in video games anyway, maybe like once or twice in tabletop games or like murder mysteries and stuff. But generally speaking, it's not a traditional role you'll probably see, whether at an indie company or a AAA company or anything in between. And yet somehow I'm here and I'm kind of making it work. But yeah, um, I guess, yeah, I've been talking for a while. So how did I get started? Onto the actual talk. So let's go back to the beginning. Here is the life lesson anecdote portion. So my interest in puzzle games probably started when I was a kid. So picking up a game, any kind of game, I always gravitated towards puzzle games. So whether that was like a physical board game or like a crossword in the weekly paper, or of course, like picking up a video game. For me, I started with PlayStation 1 being phased out to PlayStation 2, if you want to try and like guess my age from that. But that's where I got started in terms of video game consoles. And then yeah, back in sort of 2007, I used to sort of go around to the house of my only friend who had a computer good enough to run video games. And we do things like we play Portal. So we take it in turns, playing sort of levels together. Even earlier than that, I remember I was enjoying more physical puzzles. When I was just about old enough to talk, I would pick up word searchers. I'd help my mum do the crossword, like I would help my grandma do the jigsaw. Actually, when I was making this presentation, I found a lot of stock images of like young girls doing jigsaws with their grandma, and I thought about putting one in and being like, look, it's me. Side note, no, I don't have any pictures. Sadly, she's passed away. But as I grew old enough, I helped slash hindered my dad do cryptic crosswords, but don't ask me how they work. I'm still not very good at cryptic crosswords. But TLDR, always loved puzzle games. And to me, even as a kid, they were kind of like the thing that made the most sense. So there's no like timer, there's no zombie chasing you. They're kind of like a game that's, it requires your absolute and utter focus, and kind of the reward for which is the dopamine hit of the aha moment at the end when you finally solve the puzzle. And then as a university student, I developed, this is a mental health portion, I developed an intense claustrophobia during university. So the kind of like, I could barely function anymore. So it was like a long while ago, and I'm absolutely fine now, by the way, but it was things like when I was at university, I couldn't sit in a lecture hall. It was just too busy. It was just too crowded. So I had to miss a lot of lessons. But while I couldn't sit in a lecture hall, I could sit in an open plan library. And what I did in the open plan library, I played little games like 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃, if you guys remember that, while focusing on reading material in between. So I could still study enough to pass my exams and write my papers. And maybe I couldn't go to the student bar on Friday, but I could knock on the neighboring dorm room and asked if they wanted to play the latest The Room game on my laptop. So I could still get my socialization in. I still managed to like get through university through that. And yeah, even things like getting on a train, like I would never get on a train and explore the city, or I could never travel home because I was so claustrophobic on a train. But the only time I could do it was if I fired up my laptop and sort of played the latest puzzle game. So at the time, I think this was probably the Talos principle, although I have recently started replaying that, so I might be misremembering. Love it. But yeah. And I think this has a lot to do with the fact that because puzzles, unlike the fears and anxieties our brain tricks us into blowing out of proportion, are something we can control. And there's no question mark. It's just the puzzle. And the correct answer at the end once you've gone through the steps of solving it. And really, I believe there's a really good reason why games like Wordle took off during the pandemic, because this was a time when there was so much uncertainty around the world and so many people were hurting no matter where they were in the world. Wordle was, again, if you remember it, that was only like 4 years ago. What am I talking about? But yeah, if you remember it, it was a puzzle game in the truest sense of the word. And it literally united everyone around finding today's top 5 letter word. And I think that's really cool when you see literally everyone from all walks of life playing the exact same game. And when that game's a puzzle game, very, very cool. Personally, I preferred some of the spin-offs. Like I love the music one, and I can't remember its name now. Hurdle, that's it. And I loved games like Redactyl. I don't know if anyone played that, but that was kind of like a sentence pattern recognition puzzle game that took like whole Wikipedia articles and redacted all the words. And you had to like guess the topic in as few words as possible. Absolutely amazing. Best game ever. One of my fondest memories, like not even from the lockdown, but from like the last 4 years, was basically like playing that game in the morning, phoning my mum and like being like, have you done it yet? Like, did you guess it kind of thing? And then of course I'd get like the obligatory text message from my dad at like 3 in the afternoon once he'd woken up, and he'd be like, I got it in 98 words. And then of course my brother would chirp in and say, I got it in 97 words kind of thing. And all throughout lockdown, even though we were all living in different parts of the UK, it like really brought us together despite the distance. And so puzzle games do have this amazing place in my personal mental health journey. And without anyone else admitting it in the world, I think they have a special place in a lot of other people's mental health journey as well. So we saw this in lockdown, and we saw this pretty much everywhere. Like whether you're talking about like someone living alone and collecting online with friends during lockdown, or even like grandparents doing the Sudoku to stay sharp kind of thing. I mean, we literally only have to look at countless studies to see countless studies who've been done on puzzle games. And it's been kind of proven over the years that puzzle games can do things like enhance your focus, enhance your concentration, your memory, and then of course your mood as well. So you don't need to tell me twice. And for sure, this talk is way too long to really get into the science of it, but happy to talk about it afterwards. But puzzle games are also used quite frequently to sort of treat and help certain aspects of mental health conditions like ADHD, autism, bipolar disorder, things like that as well. Again, if anyone is interested in this topic more, I do have a ton of links to studies and papers I can share on the topic. I find this whole thing really, really interesting personally. But yeah, bit of a bigger topic that we can probably cover in this short talk. So let me get back into it. Where was I before? I didn't mention it before, but when I was in university, I actually studied architecture. So then fast forward to the present day, going into building and designing physical escape rooms right after university wasn't a million miles. Like it wasn't the biggest jump I've ever done in my life. Like it kind of made sense at the time. And then, yeah, coming out of university, I had a really positive career in escape rooms for many, many years after university until 2020. So I reckon you can probably all figure out what happened in 2020 to change that. But basically, people didn't want to be locked up in escape rooms anymore with potentially strangers, but even a group of 6 people. Funny that. So yeah, the start of lockdown was then, I guess, the weirdest moment in my career. And I can remember one specific meeting with the company I worked for at the time. I won't name them, but they basically, obviously, as an escape room would, had to close their doors. They had to make the entire team redundant, not just the game design team, but literally everyone. Because yeah, with no escape rooms being open, the business wouldn't really have any need for a game design team, wouldn't have need for my game design team. And I mean, why would it, right? Like we couldn't even get toilet paper. So we let alone like the materials needed to like build and construct an escape room. And even if we did, there was such like an unknown time at the start of 2020, we didn't even really know that we'd have the audience at the end. And yeah, I just remember that time thinking back to that. And I remember really not wanting to lose that. So whether at work or just me at home, like as you can tell from the first half of my talk, puzzle games meant a lot to me and my mental health. So I thought about it for a while. And I suggested we as a company pivot to play at home escape rooms. So by that, I mean things like tabletop games, printable, digital escape rooms, or even like what you kind of saw during lockdown. Well, what escape rooms did was they pivoted to like a live camera, just having like one games master with a camera on their head and like everyone via Zoom telling them what to do. There are like thousands of different ways you can convert a physical escape room into a play at home escape room, but the moment you start to sort of pick a little bit deeper into that, you realize all we're describing as escape room designers is just things like board games and video games, which they're already massive industries centered around making. So yeah, it was kind of funny. New slide. Right before lockdown, I was designing a game for Mother's Day. I'm not sure how many people in this audience are not from the UK, but Mother's Day is in March here in the UK. And so lockdown happening sort of end of January, early February. Actually, I can't remember when it was. For me, lockdown happened the weekend of the Animal Crossing game coming out. So whenever that was, that's when lockdown happened. But yeah, I was literally designing this game for my mom because we were going to play it together. And what it was like museum leaflets and like bus tickets. And I was like collecting these and like adding puzzles to them and like basically making this like fake murder mystery around it that was totally themed around her and her favorite places. And I was going to post it to her. And then the week before I was going to post it to her, we went into lockdown and the company, and we were having this conversation as a company of pivoting to at-home games. And I was like, guys, look, let me send this to you instead. Play this. And the rest is kind of history. We ended up publishing this game. Sorry, I changed a slide and explained, but basically the photo you see up on the screen is actually the game. I don't necessarily know if I recommend it because it was very, very generation one, but it's a pivotal game in my life history as well. So yeah, I did in the end play it with my mom, just played via Zoom instead of in person as I had in mind. This particular game did end up being a printable game. But across lockdown, I sort of ended up working across web games, live avatar games, like outdoor puzzle trails. I even touched virtual reality for the first time, which was pretty cool as well. And all of this is bizarrely only 4.5 years ago, but this feels like ancient history to me, since that was kind of like one of those weird inflection points in my life. So I guess it's that exact meeting is the moment that I stepped out of escape rooms and started working more broadly across all kinds of puzzle games. And I haven't looked back since. So probably without that one moment in lockdown, I probably wouldn't be here in this talk with you guys today. I probably wouldn't know half of you. I wouldn't know you, Melissa. Like I just would have been in a totally different industry doing a totally different thing. And I can't say if that would have been better or worse, but it's an interesting like thing I like to think about often. So yeah, in lockdown, puzzle games played an enormous role in my life. I don't want to be dramatic and say that they saved me, but you know, mental health and career and puzzle games and all these things are so like inextricably intertwined. I cannot talk about one without mentioning the others. And yeah, I met a lot of my closest friends playing puzzle games online in lockdown. I made some of the best puzzle games of my career during lockdown. And puzzle games were not just like a salve for me, but I think also to my friends, my family, and the wider society as well. So this brings me to, wrong way, this brings me to the point of my talk. What am I actually even talking about? So I have waffled through a lot of words by now, and you all probably know way more about my career than you ever wanted to know about. For that, I'm sorry. I will get straight to the point, I promise. If you only remember one thing from this short talk, for me, it's the idea of why. And I think if I remember correctly, that might have been one of the first questions Melissa asked me, again, back on that program of like emerging leaders. It was, why do you design games? And now it's a question I asked in every single interview, every new meeting with new teammates, and in session one of every designer I ever mentor. And maybe it's not always puzzle games, but I like to ask, why do you design games? And I'm not qualified to say what makes a good leader, but I think that just for a sense of like being in this industry, having a sense of like why you're here and what you're doing and why that's important or meaningful to you can really help sort of get you in your own mind, get your own mind, and get the minds of your team on the same place. And you might be listening and going, Mairi, I don't even design games. I am in HR or finance or something else. Or maybe you're like still a student and you want to get into designing games, or maybe you're applying for jobs. But I'd still ask the same question. Why are you doing you? Like, I guess, why did you come to the talk? Why do you log into work every day? Or why do you apply for the jobs you apply for? Or why do you say the things you say? And that's kind of at the core of this. That's pretty much the weird little life lesson I wanted to share today. Going back full circle to my anecdote, the friend I used to play Portal with, she is a mathematician now. Actually, no, that's not strictly true. She has a way cooler job than that. I'm just not smart enough to understand what it is. I think she's a geospatial analyst and she makes very amazing complex maps. My other friends, the people I was at university with, so I remember always having fun memories playing the room games with my dorm friends. They're all in STEM careers, except for one of them who actually, as of like 3 months ago, just completed a training course to become a detective, which is the coolest thing ever. And then there's me, right? At the center of that, I'm a game designer as well. So puzzles like took me and the people I know to really cool places. And yeah, as a very final note of this talk, I'll just leave you with this. Just as puzzles demand like curiosity and perseverance to solve, I think so do our careers and our personal journeys as well. And I would encourage everyone in this talk to always think about the why of what you do. So, like, why do you do what you do? And I guess when you solve that particular puzzle and find the answer, the rest will fall into place. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for coming to my talk.